Development of ear. Ear is an organ of hearing and balance, and it is consisting of three parts: external ear, middle ear and the internal ear. External ear it consists of external auditory meatus and the pinna, and middle ear it is consisting of a slit like cavity which contains the ear ossicles and the muscles of the middle ear. And the internal ear, it is made up of bony labyrinth and the membranous labyrinth. Developmentally, first inner ear develops, and the important structures like mastoid antrum, internal ear, tympanic cavity and the ear ossicles. These structures, they assume the adult size at the time of birth. This is very important point, that these structures, first is the tympanic cavity or the middle ear cavity, inner ear, mastoid antrum and the ear ossicles. They assume the adult size at the time of birth. So they do not grow, and the size in the adult and newborn will be the same. And first to develop is the internal ear. And ear is most sensitive to teratogen during the 4th to 9th week of the gestation at the time of development of ear. You can remember it by a mnemonic, that TIME, that tympanic cavity, I for internal ear, M for mastoid antrum and the E for ear ossicles. These are the four structures which assume the adult size at the time of birth. Now coming to the development of auricle or the pinna. It is developing from the 6 mesodermal thickening that are auricular hillocks or the tubercles around the first pharyngeal cleft. So 6 auricular hillocks are formed around the first pharyngeal cleft. They fuse and they form the they will form the auricle of the ear. Here you can see the hillocks. 6 auricular hillocks, 1, 2, 3 are formed in relation to the mandibular arch, and they will form the tragus, crucifix and the helix. And 3, 4, 5 and 6 hillocks are formed in relation to the second arch or the hyoid arch, and they are going to form the antihelix, antitragus and the ear lobule. So these hillocks fuse to each other and they will form the pinna. Now development of the external auditory meatus. As we have discussed in the pharyngeal cleft, that first pharyngeal cleft, that is ectodermal pharyngeal cleft, is going to form the external auditory meatus, and initially it is filled by ectodermal cells and they are called as meatal plug of the ectoderm. Here this is the first pharyngeal cleft that will form the external auditory meatus, and initially it is filled by ectodermal cells and lead to formation of meatal plug, and there will be canalization of the meatal plug and will lead to formation of the external auditory meatus. The atresia of the external auditory meatus may occur if there is failure of the meatal plug to canalize. So if the meatal plug is not canalized, there will lead to atresia of the external auditory meatus. Here you can see the first pharyngeal cleft. This is the first pharyngeal cleft. Second, third, fourth cleft disappears because of formation of this overgrowing of the second mesodermal arch, and the first pharyngeal cleft is going to form the external auditory meatus. And this base of this external auditory meatus, or base of the first cleft, which is ectodermal, it will also form the outer layer of the tympanic membrane. So outer layer of the tympanic membrane is ectodermal, and the first pharyngeal cleft is going to form the external auditory meatus. Now formation or development of the middle ear cavity and the Eustachian tube. This is the first pharyngeal pouch, and the first pharyngeal cleft will form the external auditory meatus, and first pharyngeal pouch form a recess that is called as tubotympanic recess. First pharyngeal pouch form the tubotympanic recess. Distal dilated part will form the tympanic cavity, and the proximal narrow part will form the Eustachian tube. So tubotympanic recess is formed by first pharyngeal pouch, and tubal part or the distal dilated part will form the tympanic cavity, and pharyngotympanic tube or the Eustachian tube is formed by the narrow proximal part. Now the congenital anomalies of the external ear, anosia or the absence of the auricle. It is due to absence of the auricular hillock is called as anosia, and it is usually associated with first arch syndrome. So absence of auricle or the anosia due to failure of the formation of the auricular hillocks. And the second condition is the preauricular appendages or the pits. In this condition, sometimes skin tag is present in front of the ear or anterior to the ear, and it is due to development of accessory hillocks. So it will persist and form the preauricular appendage. Or sometimes they are due to abnormal development of auricular hillock, preauricular sinus or pit is formed. Now we come to the development of the tympanic membrane. Tympanic membrane is separating the external ear from the middle ear, and this tympanic membrane is made up of three layers. Outer cuticular layer, which is ectodermal, and it is formed by the lining of the ectodermal cleft, that is first lining of the first pharyngeal cleft, so it is ectodermal. So outer layer of the tympanic membrane is ectodermal, and it is formed by the lining of the first pharyngeal cleft, that is ectodermal. Middle layer of the tympanic membrane is fibrous, and it is mesodermal. And the inner layer, inner layer of the tympanic membrane is endodermal in origin because it is formed by the lining of the first pharyngeal pouch, so it is endodermal. Thus the tympanic membrane is made up of all three layers, ectoderm, mesoderm and the endoderm, and this part represent the pharyngeal membrane. So we can say the tympanic membrane is made up of, first it is developing from the first pharyngeal membrane, and this pharyngeal membrane is ecto, meso and endodermal. So tympanic membrane is also made up of ectoderm, mesoderm and the endoderm. Here you can see the pharyngeal membrane, and the second diagram, this diagram is also showing the tympanic membrane on the pharyngeal membrane, and the rest of the first pharyngeal membrane is forming the tympanic membrane, and second, third and fourth pharyngeal membrane is forming this tympanic membrane. Sorry, second, third, fourth pharyngeal membrane will disappear. Now coming to the middle ear cavity or the tympanic cavity. Middle ear cavity or the tympanic cavity developing from the tubotympanic recess, tympanic cavity or the middle ear cavity, auditory tube and the tympanic membrane, they all are developing from the tubotympanic recess. Now the mastoid antrum. This dorsal expansion of the tympanic cavity give rise to mastoid antrum, and it is we have discussed that it is full size at the time of birth. But at the time of birth, there are no air cells at this time, and these air cells develops at the age of 2 years. So mastoid process also develops at the age of 2 years. Now the contents of the middle ear cavity or the tympanic cavity, that is malleus, incus and stapes ear ossicles. Malleus and incus are developing from the first arch cartilage, that is Meckel's cartilage, and stapes is developing from the second arch cartilage, that is Ricard's cartilage. Here you can see this is malleus and incus, they are developing from the first arch cartilage, that is Meckel's cartilage, and the stapes is developing from the second arch cartilage, that is Ricard's cartilage. Now the muscles of the middle ear, that is tensor tympani and the stapedius muscle. Tensor tympani muscle is develops from the first pharyngeal arch, so it is supplied by mandibular nerve. And the stapedius muscle, it is the muscle of the second pharyngeal arch, so it is supplied by facial nerve because it is attached to the stapes, and as we know stapes is developing from the second arch cartilage, so stapedius is also developing from the second arch. Now the tympanic Eustachian tube or the auditory tube or the pharyngotympanic tube, we have discussed that it is developing from the tubotympanic recess, and it connects the tympanic cavity with the nasopharynx. Now we come to the development of inner ear. Inner ear is the first to develop, and it develops during 4th week. And initially there is formation of aortic placoids, and these aortic placoids lead to formation of the aortic pit. And this aortic pit, margins of the aortic pit, they fuse and they form the aortic vesicle. And aortic vesicle is the primordium of the membranous labyrinth. So initially formation of the aortic placoid, and this aortic placoid is formed on the surface ectoderm on either side of the myencephalon. Here you can see the aortic placoid and the aortic pit. And here initially aortic placoid, then aortic pit, and then aortic vesicle is formed. So inner ear is first to develop in the 3 parts of the ear, and it has aortic vesicle is formed from the aortic pit, and this aortic pit is formed through the aortic placoid. Now this part, the aortic vesicle, it is divided into 2 parts, 2 portions, secular portion and the utricular portion. This secular portion will form the sacule and cochlear duct, and the utricular portion will form the utricle, semicircular ducts, and the endolymphatic ducts and the sac. So if we see the formation or development of the ear, external ear, it is developing from the first pharyngeal cleft and the auricular hallux. First pharyngeal cleft forms the external auditory meatus, and the auricular hallux, 6 auricular hallux which are formed in relation to the mandibular arch and the hyoid arch. 1, 2, 3 formed in relation to the mandibular arch, and the 3, 4, 5 and 6 are formed in relation to the hyoid arch. They fuse and form the auricle or the pinna. Now coming to the middle ear, first pharyngeal arch will form the malleus and incus and the tensor tympani muscle. So first pharyngeal arch cartilage, that is the Meckel's cartilage, will form the malleus and incus, and the pharyngeal arch will form the tensor tympani muscle. So the first, it is developing from the first arch, so it will be supplied by the mandibular nerve. Now the cartilage of the second arch is the Ricard's cartilage, and it will form the stapes, and the mesoderm of the second pharyngeal arch will form the stapedius muscle. And the nerve supply of the second arch is facial nerve, so stapedius muscle is supplied by facial nerve. Now the first pharyngeal pouch, this pharyngeal pouch form a diverticulum that is called as tubotympanic recess. The dilated part will form the middle ear cavity or the tympanic cavity, and the narrow constricted part will form the Eustachian tube. Now the first pharyngeal membrane, this first pharyngeal membrane is going to form the tympanic membrane, and so it is lined by ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm. All the 3 layers will line the tympanic membrane, because the pharyngeal membrane it is made up of all 3 layers. And the formation of internal ear, initially aortic vesicle is formed, and it is going to form the secular part and the utricular part. Secular part will form the sacule and cochlear duct, and utricular part will form the utricle, semicircular duct, endolymphatic duct and the endolymphatic sac. So this is the development of development of ear. Here you can see the inner ear. This is the aortic vesicle, then endolymphatic sac is formed. Now this aortic vesicle forms the 2 parts. Upper one is the utricular part and lower is the secular part, yellow one. So the yellow one, which is the secular part, is forming the cochlear duct and the sacule. So sacule and the cochlear duct is formed by the secular part, and the upper part, that is the utricular part, is forming the semicircular ducts, utricle and the endolymphatic ducts and the sac. They are formed by utricular portion. So initially aortic vesicle is formed, then endolymphatic sac is formed into it. This aortic vesicle divided into 2 parts, upper utricular part and the lower secular part. Utricular part will form the utricle, semicircular duct, endolymphatic duct and the sac, and the lower yellow one part, that is the secular part, it will form the sacule and the cochlear duct. So this was about the development of the ear. Thank you.